Next up, I want to bring on Philip to tell you about the future of Gnosis. Please give Philip a big round of applause.
Hello. All right, I'm going to be talking about Gnosis, its chain and vision, focused on payments and financial rails. So I start with presenting Gnosis Chain because I think many people still don't know about it. And it's kind of the foundation of everything we work towards at this point. So essentially, it's quite identical to Ethereum at this point. So we have a beacon chain, an execution layer. We use the same clients. So Nethermind, Aragon, Guess and Rest also are coming quite soon. And then on the consensus layer side, we have Nimbus, Lodestar, Lighthouse, and Steku. So pretty much the same. A few are missing, but yeah. We go through the same hard forks, and we focus on decentralization. So we actually have almost 300,000 validators online and active at this point. Of course, there's also a few differences. So we were a proof of authority network. We were never proof of work. It was based on Aura. We use xDAI, which is a stablecoin based on DAI, of course, that is bridged to Gnosis Chain as the native token, and GNO, that is an ERC20 token, as the staking token. We have 5-second block times and 16 slots epochs, meaning that we get 2.44 times faster block times and 4.8 faster finality. The block count is basically the same. It's less, but as we have faster blocks, we get to the same throughput, kind of. And we improve with a kind of plugin architecture, so we add new features on top while remaining compatible with Ethereum, because we really want to be able to go through all the hard forks in a quick fashion, so we kind of don't change the base layer too much. So this is the hard fork timeline and history. So we launched our beacon chain basically 1 year after Ethereum. And then picked up the pace quite rapidly for the merge Chapella and Dencun. And we actually went through Dencun 2 days before Ethereum, which I think is a good testament to our core devs team and its capability to stay in sync with Ethereum and maybe even be faster on some things. And then we launched the Self-Custodial chain in June, which is one of those plugins, but I'll come back to that a bit later. And Spectra, of course, is, as for Ethereum, scheduled for, well, at least the first part, because it was just split in two, but end of this year or start of the next one. So one deliberate choice we make at Gnosis Chain is to say a layer 1, whereas new chains tend to be layer 2s, or even some layer 1s become layer 2s. We want to say layer 1 chain, mostly because, in our opinion, layer 2s are still fairly centralized. But I'm not going to go into too many details today because we actually have a talk or a debate specifically about this, about whether Gnosis Chain should become a layer 2 with Vitalik, which is kind of an alpha, so I'm sharing this, I think, for the first time today in Bangkok at an event that is called DevConflict that we are organizing with Gnosis at Bangkok. So for DevCon, of course, on November 9 and 10. So we can scan this QR code if you want to go to the website or go to devconflict.com. All right, so the Self-Custodial chain, which I was alluding to before. So basically the idea is that we want a shielded mempool, basically to prevent MEV, so front-running and sandwich attacks. And we want this to be decentralized, so unlike Flashbots or MEV blocker, for example, and it should be censorship resistant. Why do we want censorship resistance? Simply because currently on Ethereum, like right now, almost 95% of all blocks are built by 2 builders, which are Titan Builder and Beaver Build. And that's actually worse than last year, where I think 90% were built by only 4 builders, but that's also not great. And obviously, it's way easier to censor 2 builders than the 1 million plus validators that are currently active on Ethereum. One way to do this is to force them to be, or those builders to be OFAC compliant, which is already the case. So most blocks are OFAC compliant, so censoring in some capacity, which is not good. Centralized block builders are, well, they also have a huge competitive advantage because they have access to transactions others don't. So they can extract a lot of value out of that. And sandwiching and front running still causes a lot of loss for users that don't know what slippage is, for example, or use dApps that are not perfectly configured in that sense. And this is where Shutter comes in. So basically, Shutter's mission is to shield protocols and their users from malicious users. They do this in 2 ways currently. One of them is to restore privacy to voting protocols, like for example, snapshots. And the other one is this encrypting mempool, which we at Gnosis are the first one to integrate and the only ones currently, but I'm sure it will come to other chains as well. And so the idea of it is basically that you can, well, encrypt your transaction before going on chain. So you sign a transaction, you encrypt it, and then you post it to a sequencer contract, and that sequencer contract actually defines the order in which those transactions will get added to a block. When a Shutterized validator gets to propose a block, they take all those transactions in that order, and then they get decryption keys from a decentralized set of keepers. They decrypt all those transactions and then have to add them in at the very beginning of the next block in the order defined by the sequencer contract. So they cannot add some arbitrary transactions in between. So they cannot do sandwiching, front running, or whatever else. This effectively makes those transactions private and secure, MEV-wise at least. You can actually use this already currently, like right now on Gnosis Chain. There's 3 ways essentially to use it. One, you can use one of those RPCs shown here on the screen. Of course, this is suboptimal because you would still give your raw transactions, your signed transaction, but clear text to those RPC providers. So you should really not use that, but deploy that service yourself. It is obviously open source, like mostly everything we do at Gnosis. You can also use a wallet that supports Shutter encryption natively, but none of these exist yet. This is actually part of a bounty at the hackathon that starts tomorrow. Or you can encrypt transactions like in the dApp locally. But sadly, no wallets, well, there's one, but you cannot really sign a transaction without also broadcasting it, which then would defeat the whole purpose of Shutter. Except for Brave Wallet that allows you to do this, but yeah, so the UX-wise it's not great, and then if you can only use Brave, then people won't use it most likely. All right, so moving on to Circles, which is a Sybil-resistant decentralized trust protocol governed by social eccentric value. Okay, that's a bunch of complicated words. Let me explain how this works. So basically, when you join Circles, a private unique token, a CRC token, but that's unique to yourself, is deployed, and you actually get 1 CRC per hour, so 24 per day. As those CRCs are all different, you cannot pay people with them because, well, they don't actually have like a value, or I might not value your CRC as much as mine, for example. And this is where trust connections come in. So basically, I can decide, and I'm of course incentivized to trust people I actually know and and actually trust in real life, and they can trust me back. And then you can do this with your like network or people you know to actually exist. And this creates a social graph. So basically, trust connections. Yeah, a graph of trust connections. What this allows us to do is that basically, imagine I want to pay someone here in the crowd that I don't know. They would not accept my CRC, right? Because they don't think it has a value. But Circles can actually find a path between me and that person, whereby someone else, for example, here in this audience would trust me, someone would trust them, and then the person I want to pay trusts that last person. And then basically the way the payment works is my tokens get transferred to that person that trusts me, their tokens get transferred to the next one, up until the last person that gets also tokens that they trust. So everyone ends up with tokens they trust and considered to be worth as much as their own tokens. So this is how you can, well, basically interconnect people and do payments basically just through trust. This, of course, encourages genuine connections. So you really should not trust anyone or some people you don't know or just any address. And this is where Sybil resistance actually comes in. So if, for example, you have a network of 10,000 bots or whatever that join Circles, they would also all get 1 CRC per hour. But because no one else of the greater, like, genuine network trusts them, they would not be able to actually spend that CRC. Yeah, and then there's a concept of groups that is, well, a collective of people, of course, that share similar interests. And those groups can actually be defined by smart contracts. And in that group, basically, all the CRC of all members can be used for that group. So imagine Eat Global decided to create a Circles group for this Pragma San Francisco. They could define a smart contract that says, okay, you got like this wristband that is NFC enabled and has a smart wallet, whatever, and then you get access to that group. And you would then be able to use your own CRC to buy merch, for example, at Eat Global without necessarily having a trust connection between you and Eat Global. Because that group would implicitly trust you because you actually went to the event, so we can prove that you exist and that you can be trusted. So basically, Circles is fair money for all. And it's about transforming monetary systems through the power of collective action. This new type of money was actually deployed in its 2.0 version 2 days ago. And this was also coincidentally its 4th birthday. So Circles has existed for 4 years now. But the new version is now accessible and has way more new features than before. All right, moving on to Gnosis Pay, which is the future of banking and payments in our opinion. Well, this was okay, my bad. So the evolution of banking. Basically, we started with banking 1, which was traditional banks. They were brick and mortar. They had limited local distribution and technical capabilities. So, I mean, way back when you actually had to go physically to a bank. Of course, they also got technically better, but then we moved on kind of to banking 2.0, which are neobanks. So that's when fintech started building on top of legacy infrastructure. So think, for example, Revolut. And now we're proposing this new concept of banking 3.0, which is on-chain banks. And then here, users regain control of their money and start banking without bankers and without borders. So there are a few technical challenges for TradFi and Web3, of course. So for example, in TradFi, you get kind of seamless UI. This was not really the case for this banking 1.0, but for neobanks, it's actually the case, in most cases at least. You get perceived trust because those banks are generally like huge corporations that can be backed by governments, for example. And they get good customer support. Imagine you lose your card or you get it stolen or do like a wrong payment, whatever, you can, with a bit of chance, get your money back or block your card or whatever. But for that, you get a slow banking system, and that is potentially costly, so you have to pay a monthly fee. For example, it's geographically restricted, of course. So for example, your bank here in the US will most likely not exist in Europe. And it's, of course, very centralized. In Web3, it's kind of the opposite. So you get poor UI. You still have to know about wallets, gas, transactions, whatever. It's dangerous. So you don't have any customer support, of course. If you lose your keys, you get them sold, and you do a wrong transaction, you're kind of shit out of luck. Let's say you will never see those tokens again, and no one actually is able to even help you if they wanted to. And there's no real-world linkage. So if you want to spend your crypto, you basically do it on-chain. Or maybe you go through a centralized exchange, but then that's kind of a bridge between TradFi and Web3, let's say. But for this, you get custody options. So you can decide to self-custody everything, to give your custody to a smart contract, to an entity, whatever you want. It's borderless, so it works exactly the same here as it does in Europe or Asia or anywhere else in the world. Of course, there's some laws that might prevent you from using it specifically, but technologically speaking, it's exactly the same. And it's composable. I'll get back to that a bit later. So the objective of Gnosis Pay is to merge those two worlds together, right? So to make it easy, nice, Everything you would expect from TradFi, but then also composable, decentralized, and more usable, composable, borderless, and available or functioning 24/7. About composability, I think that's actually very important and interesting. So within months of Gnosis Pay being deployed, 2 wallets or dApps actually already integrate Gnosis Pay, which are Metri and Zeal. So basically, those apps can decide how they integrate Gnosis Pay, so they can be arbitrarily complex or easy. So you can have, for example, Metri that is very straightforward, abstracts away everything crypto-related, or Zeal that is a bit more complex, maybe, that has a wallet, shows more information, has more features. But this is completely defined by the dApp itself, right? So they interact with smart contracts that are Web3. We don't really have to give permission to anyone to interact with those. You can also automate a lot of things if you want to. So it's kind of Neobank on the outside in your app and Web3 on the inside. And I think that's very interesting. So anyone can actually do with this Gnosis Pay card or account what they want. So a quick recap. And of course, this card actually already exists. So I have one here. Right here, it's just a normal Visa debit card. So we integrate crypto with the real world using a Visa as a debit card. It's already available, I think, since February. It's fully self-custodial. It's based on Safe, which is another Gnosis project. Actually, about the self-custodial part, I think that's very important and interesting because there are a lot of other crypto cards, but they are generally custodial. So you have to send your tokens to some entity. And they can technically rug you, they can prevent you from spending your tokens, they can maybe not give them back to you if they don't want to. Whereas on Gnosis Pay, it's fully self-custodial, so you never lose access to your tokens. Sure, Visa or Gnosis Pay could prevent you from paying with your card, but they could never get access to your tokens. They can not take them from you. You can at any point just get them back, and then you can use them on chain or with any other provider if you want to. So that's a very important point of Gnosis Pay. We use tokens issued by Monerium for payments. We have an IBAN integration. Okay, that's not really that interesting for the US markets, but in Europe it is. And coming soon, we'll have also Apple Pay and Google Wallet, more countries, USDC settlements, and multi-currency cards. All right, so if you want to learn more, here are a few interesting links. So Gnosis.io, we are a DAO, so you can also go to the forum for proposals, posting proposals, reading whatever you want, some documentation. Of course, you can also find us on Telegram, Discord, and Twitter, or whatever other network. Yeah, and that's it for me. Thank you for listening.